Good evening and welcome to SBS World News Australia. I'm Janice Peterson.
And I'm Ricardo Goncalves. China's police chief has demanded a thorough investigation into the cause of a massive fire in a Shanghai high-rise, which has killed at least 53 people. The blaze engulfed the building and it took 80 fire engines many hours to bring it under control. It's believed the fire started in construction materials being used to renovate the apartment block located in one of the most densely populated areas in Shanghai, the busy Jing'an district. Now to other stories in the news around the country. Another Qantas flight has had to turn back and make an unscheduled landing. And that is the world this Tuesday. Our next bulletin is at 9:30 on SBS 1.
And you can get more, of course, online. News around the clock at our website. Good night.
Good night. Good evening, Ricardo Goncalves with SBS World News Australia. A passenger aboard the Qantas A380 that made an emergency landing in Singapore today has reported hearing a loud boom and seeing flames on the plane's left wing soon after takeoff. Australia's major banks are facing a grilling from politicians who are accusing them of taking advantage of a lack of competition. It came as ANZ announced a record annual profit and the bank's chief executive got involved in a public spat with the shadow treasurer. All international mail deliveries from Greece have been suspended after a wave of attempted mail bomb attacks targeting embassies in Athens and European leaders. One of the parcel bombs sent from Greece reached the Berlin office of the German Chancellor Angela Merkel. At least 11 other suspect devices have been detected in the Greek capital, including 2 at the city's international airport. French students are set to rally at campuses across the country later tonight as the government says it sees signs that anti-reform protests are running out of steam. But while some striking workers are ending their walkouts, others are keeping up their resistance ahead of a final vote on increasing the retirement age in Parliament this week. And checking today's finance figures, and as mentioned, that European rescue package came in the nick of time to prevent another global market slump. Australia's market seeing its sharpest rise in 5 months. To some breaking news in that siege in the Philippines. Within the last few minutes, a riot squad has surrounded the bus seized in Manila by a former policeman. Shots have been fired and police have begun breaking the windows. Reports by CNN suggest that some of the hostages may have been shot by the gunman. And Karen Middleton joins us now from our Canberra bureau. Karen, economics isn't one of Tony Abbott's strong points. Was it a convincing performance? Just finally, for the average Australian that's asking, hey, what do I get out of this? There's the previously flagged and legislated tax cuts. There's some tax breaks announced tonight also. There's the changes to super. We've got the addition to the health reforms also. It does smell a little bit like a win for election votes, doesn't it? OK, just before you go, what kind of advice would you give for Australians heading for Bangkok? Patricia, I'm assuming this suggests the red shirt leaders have lost control of these hardline protesters. So my question is, how far are these protesters likely to go? Brian, given what we've seen, none of the potential outcomes seems to be a recipe for a stable government. And I know we've just finished or going through the end of this election, but what's the likelihood of an early election now? NAB boss Cameron Klein has joined his rivals in warning that rising funding costs are squeezing margins, but he wouldn't comment on whether NAB would lift interest rates above and beyond any move by the Reserve Bank. BHP, though, has indicated it won't overpay for the company. Speaking at its annual general meeting in London, management said that if shareholder value isn't demonstrated, then it won't proceed. The IMF believes the Australian dollar is rising on expectations the Reserve Bank will lift interest rates next week in an attempt to curb inflation. But it says the central bank should wait for a clearer outlook on the local economy and for further signs of a global economic recovery. Only yesterday, the Reserve Bank released its assessment of Australia's financial stability. In it, it said the country's financial system is quite sound and that our banks are actually getting stronger. But what they do know is that it targets only a Siemens brand of software and that it's spread through a USB key.